Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Christensen with One Siege's View Astrology. Welcome back. We're talking about Luke Newton and Nicola Coughlan on the promo tour for season 3, Bridgerton, and the planetary transits with each of the promo tour stops that they had. This is a continuation from the previous video for Toronto, so we can add on without the videos getting too long. So as you can see, I can go into a lot of depth, and I hope you enjoy that. It does take a lot to kind of bring everything out that is present in each of their charts and the planetary transits of the moment for each moment on the tour. So I kind of like to I tried to keep them at 45 to an hour, but sometimes they'll go over depending on what I'm sharing in, but also giving you a little bit of information on the astrology along the way, because I know many of you are absolute beginners and you enjoy learning or listening to this because you're very interested in what is the energy relative to these promo tour stops and what that might allude to in the symbolism for Nicola, for Luke, and what other pieces along the way might lend to something to help us understand the future patterns from, the possibility of them expanding their deep friendship into something more, because the instinctual nature that was oozing out during the promo tour is absolutely something that I think is real and true, and not all acting or anything like that. I think a lot of it was you can't act 24/7 on your instinctual nature. There's just and especially for like Luke, I don't think that would be something. I mean, he would have to study what he's gonna portray or whatnot. There's too much going on that happens out of the blue during interviews that would even hold true for either of them. I think Nicola has a capacity to navigate certain questions and share with significant level of innuendo, of course, because that helps the marketing, right? But I also think there's a level of truth that both of them are revealing in each of these stops, and we're all perceiving it. Otherwise we wouldn't have this huge level of magnetism toward them. And that's a key word I want to point out, is magnetism. Magnetism is feminine. Yin energy is like a magnifier or a magnetic towards something. And so when there's that pull, it's actually incredibly powerful when you have it coming. It's kind of interesting because it's the undercurrent that when we see when we see yang energy people are expressing through words, body language, whatnot, and then it's the pull from the magnet from that. So it's kind of interesting that it's almost like the deeper truth in the feminine and how then the yang expresses within that context, because it's the more subtle nature. Okay. And I think that's what is so compelling about this, because we're looking for something that they will do to express it from an outward standpoint. And I know I've been talking yin and yang, and not everybody is, or negative and positive energy charge, because, that's a deeper truth. And then there's also the archetypal symbolism, and archetypes can be yin or yang, or they can have carry over the, elementals like fire, earth, air, and water. And there's different, so fire and air are both masculine or yang, and then the yin is earth and water. And so what's interesting when we look at Nick and Luke, we can look at their level of what elements are more predominant in their chart. And they both have this. One of the things I think is that I've been sharing on this journey of the promo tour, and what we were picking up, and the magnetism that the fans would feel like, why am I so pulled into this pair of individuals and these actors? Normally, a lot of people have said, I don't normally follow actors, and here I am pulled into their storyline. Why? So it's the yin. It's the yin pull and looking for the yang expression. that comes out of that eventually, right? So because there's so many subtle cues, but it's not, I don't think it's all conscious. I think it's there, but I don't think they're conscious fully of all of that. As the tour went on, I think that became more obvious, but I don't, maybe I don't know. Sometimes when people get together, they have this they're looking at each other, but then there's observation. But there's observation, and then there's also projection. So it's always kind of like maybe a combination or whatnot of both. But it's there's the observation that happens to be like, wait a minute. But then when it gets pulled in and there's the desire to see something materialize, then there's the projection. Like, I want to see this thing play out. I want to see it like the storyline in Bridgerton or something like that, right? But sometimes we've seen oftentimes even folks the creators, like YouTube creators or readers, will, they'll slip up and say Colin instead of Luke. I've done it. Or Penelope, for Nicola, and vice versa. So I think it's interesting to kind of have this kind of blurred lines and, how that is a part of the equation of all of this as well, because their storylines seem similar, right? In terms of the friends to lovers potential. And, how it's interesting how it's also played up by even those behind the scenes for the production of Bridgerton. I think it's Ryan who has shared a lot of information online on social media about behind the scenes and a lot of innuendo on the ship, right? So that just fuels the fire. Something that's interesting about Nick and Luke's chart that I think adds to the magnet pole is the Scorpio at the top of Nicola's chart, and then Luke as partner of that, because he has it at the bottom of his chart. And that is such a powerful dynamic between the two of them. And that symbolism for Scorpio and Pluto for both of them is in that as well in their natal charts. So that magnetism towards it's just like this huge centrical force, I think, that pulls in, and that's the magnetism toward them both. And because they mirror each other, you can see what I'm talking about in terms of it intensifies that feed, that loop. And so it's almost like a torus. You know what a torus, Torus, and that's how energy moves in and out. And that's how energy moves in and out of not only like from form to physical to non-physical as well. It has that kind of loop. So I think it's interesting to kind of contemplate these things because of the mirroring effect. And I'm fascinated to not only look at their mirroring effect, but in the future, I will probably look at other individuals who have that strong mirroring effect as well, based on, fans who observe that and see it. And hopefully we have, of course, astrology chart information so we can actually create their charts and explore that detail. For Nick and Luke, I think it has to do with his ascendant and her ascendant, and them being in opposite signs that then builds the mirror around their natal charts. Other mirrors might be related to the sun and the moon, and having a person's maybe sun in one, like say the sun is in Sagittarius, but the other person's moon is in, what would that be? Maybe it would be more like a mirroring effect would be with the moon in Gemini, maybe. I think I have to explore, because there's also there's one other pair that I'm thinking of, two souls that are very close, I think, in at least a part of their lives. I don't have absolutes in the current moment if that's also true, that there's a lot of video of the mirroring effect on those two. And what's interesting about their astrology charts is how their nodes are. So their north node, south node, and how it sits on their angle of, it's just that they have the nodes in how they sit with each other. And it's really dominates, kind of that connection and how they might mirror. And when there's a nodal connection like that, it kind of makes me think about the potential for those souls have a lot of karma to them, but they also have something truly unique to work out. And a lot of people talk about twin flames, and I'm very cautious about twin flame because there's a lot of trauma based on twin flame. And so I went through unique experience where I had looked into that and identified into that, and then I had something unique that happened. It was a part of my awakening, I would say. And I've never used the term again, because in terms of like a lot how it's used. Very careful about adding more energy by discussion to the term twin flame. Some people feel comfortable with it and they use it all the time. I do not, because I think it can get people wrapped around something that actually is not healthy for them. So I'm very, very cautious and very aware of the power of words and how we use them and how we language things, because I'm okay with the word soulmate, because you can have a person who's a soulmate who is a friend, a platonic friend. You can even have a soulmate with between a parent and a child, or a grandparent and a child. There's different kind of soulmates that we have in life. And that is something I'm more comfortable with because it's more fluid. You will also hear me use the word karma mate. I would say a majority of relationships that we have in life have karma connected to them in some way in terms of a pattern repeating. But there is a portion, a percentage that when you make new choices because you've figured something out, then you can track into something new and meet new people, new souls, but then you will create some kind of new karma, right? And karma is, cause and effect. I mean, some people like, oh, it's a karma bad thing. No, karma is a cause and effect. Because you took X action, this is the result. And then if there is an emotional sting to something, that's more that something that would have to be resolved, right? And or you may meet another person and then you resolve that through a similar person and then resolve through that, right? So there are so many things that they make logical sense because we think very linear, from a linear fashion on planet Earth, in our experience of being in a body. But when you're out of this body and in another plane of there's no time, and it's not linear. And so I think a lot of us think linear in a linear fashion, but things are like happening at the same time or in a cyclical pattern perspective. And it's like sphere within sphere within sphere. And it's hard to help people understand that until you have an experience that can show you something outside of time and then it landing in a future moment. And then you're like, wait a minute, I was aware of that here to a certain degree. And then here it is showing me in actually manifest form, but then it's synchronistic by date or something else or whatnot. So, when you explore these, the mysticism, things of mysticism and the esoteric arts, it really can, get twisted a little bit. So you have to kind of keep your feet grounded and, breathe, do some meditation. But it helps, like when you're exploring things like astrology. I really love astrology for the fact that the symbols on the chart themselves, even though it's nice to go out and have a living experience with the planetary bodies as they're moving through the heavens and identifying them and having a communion with that, that's a living astrology. You kind of are learning from, being in nature and so forth. But we also learn the symbolism by actually drawing out the symbolism by hand, not just the digital print. So I would encourage everyone who's beginning to look into astrology to actually, get some color pencils or pens or markers and, create the symbols and then write something out about it. And then, you keep your own little notebook. I mean, that is going to actually do more for you than just listening to me. In your interest with Nicola, I encourage people to take it from the, thoughts about it and then put it into something that's actually physical. And that actually helps you learn by playing with the symbols and creating them and making it artistic. And if you want to put something with, like, you want to, create Nicola's chart, you can create Nicola's chart with your markers and pencils or whatnot. And then, create other things around that, symbolize what those, what that makes you feel about her, learning about her and what each thing maybe in her chart helps you see. Like, for example, all of her Sagittarius and her friends, that's kind of like, and her unique friends, because Uranus is in Sagittarius, these are things you can kind of put on your notebook with, little snapshots that you've cut out or whatever. And this actually helps you, bring it to life a bit more, and you will remember remember more because of how you engage with it. So I encourage that. I think it's great. And anytime I have, classroom or courses that I've taught, this is something I encourage constantly. So it's like, get out your pencils, get out your markers, get out your highlighters, print a chart, these kinds of things, and then create it on the page yourself. Get, something that I can't remember, it's protractor or something that you make the circle with, and then, create another circle, and then create the houses, and then, add in the planets, and then make a little legend for the planets. That's going to help you learn. Okay. I know that this is fun just to kind of contemplate the promo tour, but in future videos, I'm going to be, hey, take a look at this, go, maybe look at this book, as a beginner, because that's going to get you started. And if there's no action that's taken after you listen to something, it's not going to continue coming to life for you. You have to take a little bit of action. And so that's my encouragement, because very soon, I think it's to the 17th, tomorrow. I'm recording this on October 16th. And by the time this gets through my editing, it'll probably take a week, because it usually takes a week for my editor to get through things because of the backlog that he has. But I encourage people, the full moon is tomorrow, the 17th of October, and it's Aries, and it's an Aries new moon. And with Aries, we take action. We have the courage to take some action and create something. Use your own free will and make it real for yourself. Another thing you can do is also pull up your own and create your own astrology chart. Astro/seek. I think astro/seek.com. I'll put the links to the 2 places that you can create your own chart for free, and print that if you like. And then I like to then create one myself with my pencils and have fun with it, right? So, okay, we're going to dive into the second part of Toronto. I love all of the things that we got out of Toronto, and we got the astrology for both of them and the rising signs from that BuzzFeed interview. So thank you to that interviewer. I don't know who that was, but I am eternally grateful, because look how much it's created. It's created a lot of discussion and exploration by their willingness to share that. Even though we don't have an exact birth time, we got rising signs, and with rising signs, you can create a whole sign chart and go from there. So let's get started in exploring the second part of the Toronto, and we're discussing, I think, Nicola's in this, and let's go. And so I'm going to go into the next slide, and we'll take a look at Nicola. So here's Nicola's chart, and what do we want to point out on hers? So like I said before, Nicola's chart, or Nicola's year, this year she's 37. She has a lot of great things happening. She's in Jupiter, Pisces. She's in a second house while she's 37. Annual Profection, that's a traditional technique. And Jupiter is the ruler, the traditional ruler of Pisces. And so wherever, Jupiter was transiting during this year, which is a combination of both Taurus and Gemini, that she would have experiences that were home, about her motherland, about her mother, about, that highlights something about her friends, because Venus is, part of that theme, and also 5th house of her creative works. Right? Like babies were in part of her creative works, right? So having an awareness around, okay, for Nicola, she's also in a huge cycle, being in a lunar node return year. And so, and the things that are unfolding in this year are a part of her own spiritual growth as a soul. So she's evolving themes that come up, right? So a past relationship is highlighting some of those. And I think it also, like I said, past can point when we have some things that we're going to project it into the future. And it's often that we do project them in the future. How far out they go in the future, I don't know exactly that, but I'm sure that astrology could probably pinpoint that in time. I think it's more important that we were looking at past life scenario because of Jupiter, and also that that she's in a nodal return. That means the south node, while she's traveling, is coming online and reflecting something back from the past. And I already discussed that. And it's a friend. She's identified him as a friend, and people want more. But there's also all the combination of other friends that are connected to her that help us see some of the things that are behind the scenes. And that's, oh goodness, his name is blanking out. Javian. JV? Anyway, her friend, I can't remember his name. Oh my goodness. Anyway, through his social media posts, we are getting hints, I think, of what she's navigating in that connection with Luke behind the scenes. Yeah. So her friends, she's been very visible with her friends and different groups of friends. And it's interesting because her Venus is in the 11th house of friends. And there's, a lot to be said about that. But I think it's important to just keep in mind that each stop along the tour, there were different things that were emerging from Nicola that kind of show up, I think, as the communication with over time by being so much in the presence of Luke Newton in a different format beyond the production, beyond having to act out something. This is like interviews and, promo stuff, right? So they're having to disclose things about themselves that they never thought. And as the time went on, it became more clear that Luke Newton would give away a lot more information than maybe what people were comfortable with in him revealing. And so even though there's some interviews, what's odd is like I've looked at other interviews and some podcasts that he's done, and he's done phenomenally well in those. So this is an interesting period of time that was a lot of stuff, I think, because of their connection that needed to be revealed for him and needed to be revealed for her. And along the way, I think she continually is warming up to Luke, which is part of the past relationship, I think, that was emerging and needed to have some of the walls that were put up and boundaries and things like that, they start to break down. And the truth is, over time, I really do think Nicola's feelings for Luke were growing, but she wouldn't, I think, he also put up boundaries as a professional not to go there because that's, it's work. You want to protect that space. So I think with that relationship and their professional relationship, there's professional relationship and what we see, and then there's what we don't see. And a lot of people want so much to see what we don't get to see, right? But they're so introverted in so many ways. We will get teeny, tiny slivers of the truth, to be honest, until there's some major announcement, maybe. I don't know. If they go down that path, that's up for them to choose. It's their free will. But I think the promo tour was a part of that to be initiated into the certain past life storylines for them to come online and start working on them, because then you can evolve. And they are both working on some things. Someone had mentioned in the comments on my videos that I think somewhere along the promo tour, I don't know where, and if you know where this is and have a link to it, that she is reading a book about communication, and then to kind of look at that as probably her ability to communicate with Luke in a new way. If you think about that, that's one of the main things that will help you in relationship, is learning how to communicate with people that you might have blocks, they might have blocks. And to get to a new outcome, you have to learn a different way of receiving and also communicating. And especially when you're in a period of conflict, right? So yeah, I think that's important. And she was absolutely doing that. And with the North Node in her house of communication, third house communication, absolutely, she would want to take action to learn how to communicate better and maybe learn about the give and take and how to support him, which she absolutely did on numerous occasions during the promo tour. She does certain things with body language for Luke to calm him when he's more anxious. Like she did that several times in the interview when they're on the morning show in Toronto, and she comforts him by touching his arm because she can see that he's visibly distressed when she brings up Ryan Gosling and how they present that information. So she has done that on numerous occasions. She's also picked up, it wasn't in Toronto, but on another interview, I think it was in London, where they were talking about where he got off on the wrong scene and was talking more about episode 5 when they were actually talking about the carriage scene, and she helped get them back on track. So she knows when to pick up. She knows she's got the chops, communication chops, to do that publicly better than him when he gets anxious, and can get them back on. And she also has a way of touching him to like bring him back into that moment versus going out in his mind, which he does because he fixates on those things. So I think, I want to point that out about Nicola's behavior during the Toronto part of the promo tour. Also, when they did the little video clip when they were presenting each city along the promo tour, the body language in Toronto is she's giving him a full body hug, like massive body hug, and his own the way his body is turned to her, they are very comfortable in Toronto. I even thought about that when they were doing the BuzzFeed interview, the unedited BuzzFeed interview, how comfortable they were, even though they were both down with a cold from all the travel they had been doing, which is because they're in close proximity to each other. They're both not, definitely Nicola is showing a lot more cold symptoms, but I think also Luke has, because the way his voice is in that interview. And I think with the the planetary transits, I would emphasize that Saturn is making it a little bit tricky for her energy, because Saturn, when it sits on a planet in your chart, it's like kind of giving you a restriction a bit. And Jupiter is responsible for all of the Sag in her chart, her third house, and all of that, her public persona. So we're seeing that she is under the weather in Toronto. So all of that travel has led to this moment of kind of a breakdown of her immune system. That's the stress that Saturn can put on that, from your body experience, right? Also, you have all of this Gemini, even though it is a supporting air to her air ascendant. So Aquarius is fixed air and Gemini is mutable air. This energy is lending her the ability to communicate a lot of things, and fun and joking and all of that, and quick-witted and all that. But it's also moving towards the accentuation of her Chiron when the sun gets up there in 3 days. Yeah. So that will happen around the end of Galway, like around Galway. There's some pressure about that on her Chiron. There is like maybe a healing going on when she's back in Galway with Luke, in that part of the promo tour. Okay. But because Saturn is squared, there's still something happening as a tension to her self-confidence and how she's guarding her feelings. So she's still having the experience of, I can't let, even though it's presenting. So she's maybe trying to hold things in, but they're still leaking out because Neptune makes it like easier for that to happen. But it's more of the tension between the Saturn square, this volume of planets and all this energy, transiting opposite. And then Saturn is accentuating that in a big way, right? So that's important to point out. But it's also a very important period of time, these moments for her to pick up for her own evolutionary turning and her own evolutionary insights for where she can bring healing to her own patterns, and also how she may show up anew in relationship and how she communicates. I mean, she is definitely been made aware of, energy that has stimulated things within her that she probably recognized but did not want to pay attention to, and just goes to work. She might bring them out in some of her characters as part of how she presents it, but there's also still trying to have a breakthrough on something, right? Because if she hasn't allowed herself to be in relationship to fall in love, I mean, think about some of the comments that she's shared on the promo tour, like, I haven't been in love since I was 9. And yet she's probably had relationships, right? Or I don't know if it was exactly 9 years old, but you know what I'm saying? It's like there was a moment in time. And if that was true, that haven't been in love since I was 9, who was she in love with 9 years old? You're a child at that point. But age 9 was the beginning of her for being on film, which is interesting. And that's also a nodal opposition when you're 9 years old. That's the halfway point until your full nodal opposition, your first one. So it's a very interesting cyclical pattern when she mentions it like that, right? And her connection to Venus and Aphrodite is so powerful, which I'll discuss at length in the Swan video that I'm doing. But I want to point out that I think there's a presentation of Nicola as a person, a human being who's going through these experiences and has feelings that she hasn't let go beyond a certain expression because of trying to contain it. I mean, that's trying to, but she's got a Saturn next to Uranus. She's not going to be able to contain it in time. It'll always pop out. It always will show up. And then she'll get this stark contrast of experiences, because she will wonder how can that sneak out like that? Like, I've tried to control it, or she will have strong sense of when in her private life be more like controlled because of her sun in Capricorn wants to control like the expression of the self. Okay. Because it has a status and it cares about the status, right? That's in her memory, in her unconscious memory. So being a part of Bridgerton kind of brings up that theme in a unique way, being a part of the Regency era. What was really true, what was the truth in Regency era? They're getting to display something very different, right? That's the Aquarian overlay of present life, the Aquarian period of time that's opening up so many things and allowing a more robust freedom of expression. It's very much a liberation, but there's parts of the self, but it takes a construct, right? So it has to have some shape, right? What else? Nicola's
all of that Gemini in Toronto is her playfulness and the creativity that she expresses. It's there because her ability to kind of think on her feet in the moment, and still the comedic timing that she has is just so present in that moment. And the comedic timing to me is all the energy in the fifth house of creativity, but then you also have her third house being activated with Mars and the North Node return. And Mars is the precision in terms of the ability to execute comedic timing and what's said, those kind of things. So I think that's visible also in what she displays during the interviews in Toronto. Now, some people perceived and I think it is a matter of perception, because I could, ask a million different people and you'd have a million different perceptions, because everybody will hone in on something that they receive from a piece of information, an image, what is being communicated within the movement of a video, right? All the body language, what is being said, what's the tone, all of that. There are different tones when it's just the written word, right? You can capture the more descriptive something is when it's just written text, right? You can still pick up some tone, but not the same as if somebody acted out and was displaying it in a moving picture. That's why video is so powerful. So with that, I would say that the videos they're so much more powerful than, say, in a magazine that they did some promo through magazine articles and those kinds of things that were published, right? So they bear truth and facts and those kinds of things, and they might have something that's created in your imagination of what they're describing and those kinds of things. But the body language, the tonality of something is so much more powerful from an image, from the video, the flow of information that's completely permeating the consciousness. And I think that's definitely the case with, what we perceived on the promo tour in Toronto. Numerous examples of how they might have worded their connection. What is your relationship, and how they communicated that with the interviewers was very much, the fandom went crazy over some of how it had changed and what were they saying, but it was also what they were not saying. And that was like, oh, they didn't say this. They're reframing that. Why? And that to me is because of what was happening to the point in Rio. So yeah, I'm sure that's the case. So to me, is like Rio was the major softening, and we're seeing some of that in Toronto. And yet there's a different context of the vibe between Toronto and Rio, in terms of, how sensual is Toronto compared to Rio de Janeiro, right? I mean, I think that's what people pick up on as well, but it's also because Jupiter had moved from Taurus into Gemini, and it accentuates things differently because it expands the energy. That's what Jupiter does. So it gives us that perception. But not only that, Saturn, of course, is still in Pisces, and it's adding tension to Nicola's Jupiter of what will be expressed, even though it leaks out, right? And Saturn in Pisces for Luke has a different kind of focus. So there's something to be said about that, right? Saturn in Pisces does accentuate by what is being structured in the consciousness as well. So through those moments and through all the fandom watching and observing and asking questions, and eventually more videos will reveal more things, of course, but it's kind of like what gets structured in the consciousness, and then what might be learned from that and understood from that. And the more and more I have done these videos, the more I'm becoming aware of how powerful their combination is, because we could say all the intimacy and all that, yeah, and all the attraction and the Psyche and Eros as well, but they both have this powerful Scorpio energy. For Luke, it's at the bottom of his chart, and for Nicola, it's at the top of her chart. So there's an obsession with Nicola, I think, that's actually stronger than it is similar, but I think it's stronger with Nicola because of where it is in their charts. Okay, her career, and they both risk the vulnerability greatly when they did the intimacy scenes, right? But if you think about terms of what culture would look, each culture will look at it slightly different, right? But from a culture perspective, Nicola revealing more of her body, more of that part of herself, more body of the feminine. There is, I guess you could say, seeing Luke's tush that's very revealing and very vulnerable for him too, and the perception of his body and all the, for the female gaze, that there's a high vulnerability for him too. There's different kinds of vulnerability that both of them had to go through, and they were revealing those, and those became visible in 2024, right? When those released, of course, they had to go through those moments of filming that, but it's kind of what goes into people's perception when they pick up on that vulnerability, but also the obsession with it. There is a high obsession with both of them, but I think it's an interesting point of perception when it is relating to Nicola, because of the beauty the beauty of it, and the goddess is tied into that relationship with Nicola in a big way, and how that continues to her showing up at the Emmys, and people on I guess when you could chat on their page or something from the live stream, and how much was about wanting to see Nicola, and how much it dominated that stream of chat. That's her Pluto in her 10th house of career, Scorpio, the obsession part, right? And then she has this stabilizing moon on the bottom of her chart in Taurus. And that's an exalted moon, right? So she has that, there will be the obsession about that, what image that is. And it's part of her life expression and what she's going to be bringing forward for us, right? And did she know about that when she started? No, she did not. It's more of an experience that will come, because in her natal chart, she has Pluto opposite the moon, but right there holding with her is Pallas Athena in Scorpio. So she has this kind of a powerful position of Pallas Athena, a feminine archetype standing with her Pluto. So it's a transformation of being a powerful woman, being in the public eye, how she shows up by doing those intimacy scenes and burying it and saying, and it was a big FU. That was hers. That's what she said. It was a big FU for people who, were uncomfortable with that, and to show up in all of herself. So there's so much going on to understand about each promo tour. Was just incredible amounts of layers and layers of information that we are learning, because we received the information about their astrology and what she communicated to us, and that would be revealed by the Mars and her North Node, and also by it coming with all that air coming out through her, that communication coming through her. So I think it's very powerful to explore the astrology, to kind of understand each layers of the cake of energy, so to speak, and what is adding to them as individuals, because all that air is adding to her air ascendant. So it's like going to continue give her rise, right? But she is going through a massive transformation with Pluto in Aquarius. As Pluto does go through Aquarius, we have a small moment with it in 29 degrees Capricorn, but that's still so close to her ascendant sign that she's still in the transformation process, right? It's a deep transformation. So until Pluto is, a couple of degrees away from her ascendant, she's in a massive transformation, which we're fully aware of, right? Nothing new there. But when we have all that air, it's kind of giving her information and insight to her own evolutionary path and journey as well. So this has been I think a real good deep dive to kind of explore the importance that was in Toronto for us, but also for them as individuals, right? So that lends to us having a deeper understanding of as above, so below, as above, and understanding the power of each individual and the power each have in a given moment of time, and the themes that emerge. And hopefully that gives you insight to that, what you might be looking at if you explore your own. So I hope you have learned something new in astrology from this share about Toronto. The next stop we're going to take a look at is Dublin. Dublin is amazing because it's Nicola's home country, and their energy when they're on the red carpet in Dublin is unique and to itself from all of the other, and what they're wearing says so much to me. So I'm looking forward to diving into that next. So looking at Dublin and then Galway, maybe Dublin and Galway together, depending on the time of how long that video takes. And then we'll go from there and, finish off this particular series with the images for the swans and Aphrodite. I can't wait to share that one. I'm so excited. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and until next time, thank you so much. Have a great day.